right? And how we actually study issues. A lot of things that we study about, a lot of curves and diagrams, which you answer in your exams, are actually outcomes of policy debates in the United States or in the Western world, which have a very specific political context there, right? But okay, but at the moment we are going to talk about this larger issue. So the idea is the first fundamental theory of welfare economics says that that a competitive economy will be Pareto efficient. Okay, and that is why markets are said to be efficient. When they say markets are efficient, what it means is that basically, if you have a decentralized market economy, if you have many sellers, many buyers, many producers, yeah, and there are no externalities, then the outcome in that market economy is Pareto efficient. So today I'm going to question this idea of Pareto efficiency. Okay. So does that mean, so this looks like a theorem. This is, I can always give a very rigorous mathematical proof of that, but that's not really what is required here, right? Okay. The point is, you can, but if you can make a mathematical proof, then it all looks inevitable. It looks as if it's some science, right? It looks as if there is no scope value judgment. Something mathematically, the mathematical model seems to be logical, and since it's logical, it is not normative, it is positive. Okay, so that kind of an argument, and therefore there must be some inevitability to markets, right? Whatever markets do must be accepted as right. Okay, so that translation is what I'm going to question now. Okay, I'm not going to question the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics, though it can be questioned. Yeah, what I'm going to ask a question now in the rest of the lecture is the translation from the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics to the general argument which is made, which says that whatever markets do must be good, yeah, and must be accepted, as if it was, it was mechanical, right? So I'm going to question this mechanical acceptance. Okay, fine. So for that, I'd like to introduce to you an idea of utility. Okay, let's understand what is meant by utility. So we thought of consumers maximizing utility. So let's understand what is meant by that. Okay, so utility is no longer looked upon by economists as the capacity of a commodity to satisfy a human want, because capacities of commodity to satisfy human wants are absolute, right? For example, a glass of milk has a given capacity to satisfy a human want, so it should be an absolute quantity, but different people might value that glass of milk differently. Yeah, so therefore, instead of having this objective idea of utility, economists now think of subjective ideas of utility. So they say individuals value things differently, and the way one individual values some things cannot be comparable with how another individual values the same thing, right? So, and that's perfectly fine. So because people value the same things differently, and that's a fact of life, so we incorporate that. And then what we do is, the underlying idea is preferences. Okay, so individuals have preferences. Individuals have preferences. Okay, over all the goods and services that they can consume. They can consume. What does this mean? This means they can rank all the goods and services that they can consume in a way that is complete and transitive. Okay? In a way that is complete. What do you mean by complete? So basically, if you're faced with, if you're consuming say 50 goods and services, then you must be able to say which is the one which you prefer the most, which is the one which you prefer the second most, and so on, over all these 50 goods and services. Right? So you must not have any good or any service which you cannot put in a ranking vis-a-vis anything else. Yeah, so that is the first assumption that we're making about preferences. Okay, so preferences have to be complete. Okay, preferences are required to be complete, and this is a very important requirement. I'll tell you why it is important to have that idea, right? So preferences are have to be complete, and sometimes I wonder whether it's really possible to rank everything vis-a-vis in a relation to everything else. For example, how do I value? Right, today I was in the forest and I was watching a herd of gaur, beautiful herd of gaur, and there was this magnificent looking bull who was standing there, and in the beautiful morning sun, it was a great sight to behold. Now, tomorrow I'll be driving to Pune. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to meeting a friend and having a good time with this friend. And, I don't know whether I can put these two experiences, these two activities in the ranking with related to each other. Which one do I prefer more? Which one would I rather go without? Right? It's a difficult question. But the assumption here is that individuals can resolve this paradoxes. Individuals can resolve these issues and somehow manage to rank everything vis-a-vis each other. Okay, it's a hard thing to do, but we are assuming individuals can do that across all the goods and services that they can consume, right? Current as well as future, right? So how do I rank? For example, how will I rank the experience of watching this beautiful gaur today against the experience of giving a lecture in an American university in the next fall, right? Okay, so spending my time like that. So I should all be able to sort of rank all those activities. Okay, right. So that's completeness. And secondly, transitivity. That is, if I prefer A to B and B to C, then I must prefer A to C. Okay, uh, that is the transitivity kind of an argument. And there's a classic counterexample to transitivity. Suppose I'm going to buy curtains, right? I want a very dark shade of curtains. I'm going to buy curtains for my home theater, and I don't want any light coming in, so I want curtains which are as dark as possible, right? Black curtains. So I go to a curtain shop, and I go to a clothes shop, and they show me the darkest possible shade that they have, right? Which are called shade one. Then there's another shade which is slightly less dark. So I'm really indifferent between shade one and shade two. Then there is shade three, which is slightly dark, less dark than shade two, right? So I'm again indifferent between shade two and shade three. So I'm perfectly fine with shade one or shade two or shade three. But there's a shade four, okay? Shade four, which is marginally less dark than shade three. But shade one and shade four are very different. Shade 4 is significantly less darker than shade 1, and I would definitely prefer shade 1 to shade 4. But I'm indifferent between shade 1 and shade 2 are the same ranking for me, shade 2 and shade 3 are the same ranking for me, shade 3 and shade 4 are the same ranking for me. So by transitivity, actually shade 1 and shade 4 must also rank the same. Yeah, but that cannot be the case in this case. So basically, preferences can also be non-transitive, but the kind of preferences which economists require are preferences which are complete and transitive, collectively referred to as rational. Okay. Why is that so? Because utility now is dependent upon preferences. Now utilities are so the idea is if you can put preferences through rankings, okay, then the utilities that you assign are only numbers which reflect this ranking fully. Right, so suppose if I got say apples, oranges, and bananas, and if I prefer apples to oranges and oranges to bananas, so if I say, for example, so apples preferred to oranges, preferred to bananas. So if I assign a number 10 to apples, okay, 2 to bananas, 2 to oranges, and 1 to bananas, this ordering reflects these numbers reflect my ordering because the most preferred outcome has a higher number associated with it. Okay, then these numbers are referred to as utilities. Okay, utilities. right? So I would say when I say the utility of apples is 10, utility of oranges is 2, and utility of bananas is 1, these numbers don't really have any meaning in their own, on their own, right? 10 doesn't have any meaning on its own. It's just that the number associated with apples must be greater than the number associated with oranges if I prefer apples more to oranges. So these numbers can as well be 20, 4, and 1, right? Because they're again the same ordering. They could as well be 35, 12, 9. Right, so the absolute numbers don't matter, it's only relative rankings. Okay, and the point is these numbers are then called utilities. Okay, and what we do is we maximize, we think of individuals as maximizing utilities. Okay, so these individuals could have any preferences. These individuals could also be altruistic, for example. An individual can prefer somebody else's welfare compared to his or her own, right? Individuals don't necessarily have to be selfish. Okay, so they're not maximizing their own selfish interests, right? What they're maximizing is, what they're working on is preferences. So individuals can be altruistic, individuals can have preferences of fairness and so on and so forth. Whatever they want, whatever the preferences, as long as those preferences are complete and transitive, economists are fine. Modern economics is fine with it. Okay, and as long as you have complete and transitive preferences, what do I mean by complete transitive preferences? You should be able to assign a higher utility. The number associated with the more preferred outcome must be greater than the number associated with the lower preferred outcome, and these numbers are called utilities. These are only ordinal rankings. They are nothing, no absolute values. Okay, and then given these numbers, you get a numerical function, and then you try to sort of see what activities give you the highest utilities. How do you actually give your resources then, and given your preferences, how do you manage your resources so that you end up getting maximum utility? That is the problem with the consumer, right? Okay, right. So now let me think of an interesting situation, right? Let me think of, you know, so let's think of a situation where I'm going to make a detour in game theory, but at the moment I'm not going to talk to you about what the outcomes are, right? Any concepts of game theory, right? Assume that there is a husband and a wife, okay? Husband and a wife, okay? Now, the husband, both of them are software professionals, but they work in different companies, right? Different companies in different cities in the country. And this is not from the work from home times, right? This is from the old pre-pandemic, pre-corona times, where the husband stays in Mumbai, wife stays in Delhi. Okay, husband lives in Mumbai, wife lives in Delhi. Okay, husband's birthday, or say New Year's Eve. Let's make it New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, they want to spend together. Okay? So, wife comes down to Mumbai. Okay, wife comes down to Mumbai. Right? Okay. Now, the wife has come down. There's two things that they can do together. So, whatever they want to do, obviously, they want to do together. The husband, so there are two options. There are two options. Option one, go for a classical music concert. Option two, watch the IPL match at home live. Okay. Now this is fine, but we have a peculiar situation. The husband and the wife both have different preferences. The husband would much rather go for the classical music concert, whereas the wife would much rather watch the IPL match at home. But whatever they do, they would want to do together. Okay, so this is the kind of a situation that we have. Okay, so for example, husband. Okay, so this I will call, go for the classical music concert. Okay, I will call this C. I will call, denote this by option by C. okay, or CM, okay, and this I will call IPL, okay, this I will call IPL. Now for the husband, let's see what are the four things, what are the four alternatives that the husband has. Okay, the husband has the alternative that he goes for the classical music, the wife goes for the classical music, right? So the first part here represents what the husband wants to do. The second part represents what the wife does. Okay, so CM, husband goes for the classical music, wife goes for the classical music. So this he would prefer over he watching IPL and wife watching IPL. Okay, this he would prefer over him going for classical music and the wife going for the IPL, right? And finally, the least preferred outcome is the husband actually watches the IPL at home. He doesn't like it at all. And the wife is sitting at Shanmukanand Hall listening to a classical music concert, which he doesn't appreciate. Right? So this is what the husband would have the most preferred. This is what the husband's most preferred thing would be. Okay, that he watches the classical music, wife uses classical music. The next best would be okay if that can't happen, then both of them watch IPL at home because he would much rather spend time with his wife. But even if that's not going to happen, then he does what he wants to, wife does what he wants to. And the least preferred is that both of them do exactly the opposite of what they want to. So what I have is a preference ordering for the husband. Okay? I have a preference ordering for the husband. Okay? All right. Yeah. Now let's represent it by utilities. So this is the most preferred for, right? Okay. So let me give it a number 4. And this is the next most preferred 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now let me think of it from the wife's perspective. The wife would be happy, most happy, if her husband went for the IPL. Again, the first part of this bracket represents what the husband does. And she also went for the IPL. So they both of them stayed at home watching IPL. If that's not going to happen, then she would rather accompany her husband to the classical music concert. If that does not happen, even that's not possible, then she says she will go and watch. Then the husband goes for the classical music and she watches the IPL. And finally, if even that's not going to happen, then the husband goes for the IPL and the wife watches, right? So these are the wife's preferences. And again, let's represent these preferences by utilities, which are only real numbers, right? And again, the most preferred, let me give it a number 4. Let me give it this number 3. Let me give this number 2. Let me give this number 1. Okay, right? Again, you see for the wife preferences, the most preferred has the highest number associated with it. The second most preferred has the second highest number associated with it. And these numbers are called utilities. Okay, now let me put that into what is called a matrix. Okay, what is called what we call a kind of a normal form matrix. Okay, so let me write a matrix. Okay, in this matrix, the wife's here, the husband's here. Okay, so this is CM. Let me make this slightly more. The CM, right? This is CM. This is IPL. This is IPL. Okay, so this is what wife does. This is what the husband does. Okay, now if both of them go for a cricket match, so CM happens, the husband gets 4. And if CM happens, how much the wife gets? She gets 3. Right? 4, 3. Okay. If the husband goes for the cricket match and the wife goes for the IPL, right? Okay, so I'm getting sorry, the concert, classical music. The husband goes for the classical music concert, and the wife goes for the IPL. Then you have CM IPL, so the husband gets two. Okay, right? CM IPL, and the wife also gets two. Right? If this happens, CM IPL, wife gets two. If IPL CM happens, husband goes for the IPL and the wife goes for the CM, the classical music concert. Both get 1-1. If the husband goes for the IPL and the wife also goes for the IPL, right? So IPL happens. In which case the husband gets three, right? Let me just sort of. The husband gets three, the wife gets four. Okay, so this is called a normal form representation of this situation. Now look carefully. Look carefully. Okay. Now suppose CM happens. Both of them go for a concert, right? Classical music concert. Ask yourself the question, will the husband have any incentive to get out of this classical music concert and start watching, switch on the IPL, go home and switch on the IPL while the wife is still at the classical music concert? If it does that, then the outcome will be IPL CM, and what he'll get is just one, right? Whereas by sitting through the concert, he was getting four. The wife actually loves IPL, but she is in a classical music concert. What happens if she moves out of the classical music concert and goes home and starts watching an IPL? Then the husband is not with her. So CM IPL will happen and the wife's payoffs will go from 3 to 2, while the husband is still watching the classical music concert. So the point is, if both of them are watching the classical music concert, none of them will have an incentive to move unilaterally. Okay? This is an important concept in economics, the idea of equilibrium. We have a situation where nobody wants to deviate from the situation on their own. Okay, and you therefore this is actually called a Nash equilibrium, right? Okay, but it's, you could just refer to as an equilibrium where nobody wants to change what they're doing, provided others don't change what they're doing. Okay, right? Okay, so 4-3. Right now, is this a Pareto efficient situation? So, for example, if you look at the wife, 3-4. Okay, is it a Pareto efficient situation? If you look at the wife, what is the best way to improve her welfare? She's already getting 3. Her welfare will improve if the outcome is IPL, right? So if you actually make both of them watch IPL at home, then the wife's utility will go from 3 to 4, but the husband will fall from 4 to 3. So there is no way in which one person can be made better off without making anybody else worse off. Yeah, so CM. Similarly, if both of them are watching IPL, right, then you can see that if the husband decides to sort of get out of the IPL and go for the classical music concert, then his payoff will actually fall from 3 to 2. So he'll be worse off. So he will not make that move on his own as long as the wife doesn't also accompany him. Similarly, if both of them are watching IPL, the wife doesn't have any incentive to keep on go and watch the classical music concert because her payoff will fall, right, from 4 to 1, and therefore nobody has an incentive to actually make a unilateral move. So you have another equilibrium where IPL. In this equilibrium, the husband is relatively better off. In this equilibrium, the wife is relatively better off. But there is no way in which you can say that one equilibrium is better than another. Right? There are two situations which are such that once they're established, nobody will want to move away on their own from that situation. That is what economists think of an equilibrium. Equilibrium is a very, very favorite idea of economists. They're always looking for equilibrium. Okay, right? Though many times the equilibriums don't exist, and therefore economists are at a loss to analyze those situations. Right? Okay, fine. So you have equilibrium, right? Now, okay. Now let me change this game a little bit. Okay, here the wife is an independent-minded person. Okay, the wife has her own preferences. Okay, because these preferences, you have this situation. Now think of a situation where this wife is actually a poor thing, old school wife who actually has been trained to believe that she should just have the preference is exactly the same as her husband's. Okay, so the husband's preferences are like this, as we said, CM, both of them should watch the match, right? Okay, then the next is IPL, okay, right? So the husband would unilaterally prefer, would say, okay, let's both of us go to the classical concert, and that's what I prefer the most. Then the next most preferred is both of us go to the IPL, okay, right? And then the husband says that the third most preferred is this IPL, okay, and finally, okay, and I will put the same numbers here. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And now I want to make the difference for wives. The wife is going to have exactly the same preferences as the husband. Okay. Right? Okay. She is just trained to believe, she's been brought up to learn, to think that whatever the husband does is the best, and she has no independent mind, and so that's how her preferences are exactly the same as her husband. Okay, IPL. Sorry, I put a comma here, so I remove that. Okay, and again, give it 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, right. Now, if I now make a table here, just like I made earlier, okay, just like I made earlier, I make a table here. Husband, wife, okay, CM, IPL, CM, IPL. Now, if CM happens, both get 4, 4. Okay. If CM, IP, as you can see from here, CM, both get 4, 4, exactly the same preferences. If CM, IPL happens, both of them get 2, 2. Okay. If IPL, CM happens, both of them get 1, 1. And if IPL happens, both of them get 3, 3. So here clearly, you see, think of the point CM. Okay. Think of the point CM. Now suppose both of them are watching a classical concert. Will anybody have an incentive to make a unilateral move from CM to CM? Okay, right? So if the husband is watching the classical music and the wife is watching the classical music, the husband moves on his own to this, his payoff falls for 1. So he values his wife's company, his payoff falls for 1. So he won't make that move on his own. Similarly, the wife will not get up and go to the IPL because her payoff will go from 4 to 2, right? So she will not make that move. So nobody will make a unilateral move, and so this here actually you have, you know, you have an equilibrium, right? You have an equilibrium. Similarly, IPL is also an equilibrium. Okay, IPL is also an equilibrium, right? Because if both of them are watching IPL, if the husband shifts to the CM strategy, his payoff goes from 3 to 2, so he becomes worse off. Similarly, if the wife is watching, the wife changes her preference, changes what she's doing, her payoffs go from 3 to 1, so she becomes worse off, so nobody will move. But here, CM is Pareto efficient compared to IPL. Right? Why? Because the wife, both of them can be made better off by simply following the husband's preferences. Right? Okay? IPL is, so basically instead of IPL, CM. So just doing what the husband prefers the most actually makes both of them better off. Not only, so if you compare the two CMs, right? The CM in the first case, when the wife had her own independent mind, actually gave you an equilibrium 4-3. Here, this is 4-4. So if you move from this equilibrium, this preference structure to this preference structure, everybody would be better off. The way the economists understand it. Yeah, this would be more efficient compared to this kind of a preference structure would give you better utilities, would make everybody better off, without making anybody else worse off compared to this. But do you really think that we should have those kinds of preferences? That do you think societies where wives follow their husbands blindly, right? Wives just follow their husband's preferences are desirable, or are societies where wives, women have their own minds and wives state what they want to do and they can often, their preferences might conflict with their husbands, so women as independent persons. Which society is better?
Independent.
Independent, right? Okay, so clearly, but that conflicts with the Pareto efficient idea, right? With the independent society might actually not be as efficient in terms of maximizing utilities compared to the second kind of society. The second kind of society is a slave society, right? Okay, so you see the funny point. Therefore, what are we then saying? We are saying we would prefer a society which is slightly less efficient, because there are certain things which we believe ought to be as they are, which we believe because that women are independent individuals and they have to have their own preferences, own minds, and be able to state those preferences outright upfront, even if those preferences are not the same as their husband's preferences, right? So I think, if because we believe that's the kind of society which is more desirable than a society which is based purely on women following their husbands, just obeying their husbands fully, or just having the same preferences their husbands have. Now, here, it's not really a husband and a wife, right? These are just parables. This is just a story that I've created to illustrate a point. But the important point then is that we are saying is that what is important is a value judgment that we have to have about society, whatever those value judgments are. And I'm not going to go into the exact content of the value judgments because that point is quite irrelevant to the overall lecture that the overall point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is that markets by themselves do not necessarily, so there is nothing automatic about markets being automatically good, right? The first fundamental of welfare economics is technically correct, in that it says that if you have an economy where there are many buyers, many sellers, and buyers are maximizing their utilities and sellers are maximizing their profits, the economy will be a Pareto efficient economy, in the sense it will not be possible to make somebody worse off without making anybody, it's not possible to make somebody better off without making anybody worse off. That point is well taken. So there are certain advantages to a market economy. That is, of course, undoubtedly true. Yeah, and you should not stop trade for no reason. For example, if I have a lot of mangoes, I've got mangoes and mangoes and mangoes at my mango orchard, and I can't simply only eat mangoes all the while. I need rice, I need the other things. So there is somebody else who only has paddy, rice, right? And she can't just eat rice. She wants some mangoes. So I give her some mangoes and she gives me some rice, and both of us become better off compared to what we are. Those are definitely gains from trade. Okay, and those kinds of transactions should not be unnecessarily stopped. Okay, if those transactions are to the mutual benefit of both the parties concerned, then it's a question of whether you want to, then those transactions should not be stopped. That I can fully understand. Okay, I can even understand, in the last class we talked about whether people should be allowed to sell kidneys. And in fact, there is a whole debate in economics about whether organ sales should be legalized. Iran is the only country in the world which actually has legalized or trade in kidneys, where you can offer to put your kidneys up for sale, right? Okay, and the debate around that whole is very, very instructive. Okay, and I think some of you should follow that debate to just understand how economics can make arguments and counter arguments, and those arguments can be very, very, the whole argumentative process can be very, very interesting, very illuminating, and we all learn a lot from those kinds of arguments, right? So you can make a case for why there should be trade in organs as well, right? Because the argument is that if you don't allow that, if by restricting the trade on organs, many more people are actually dying. Okay, because they don't get organs on time. And whereas there are people who are actually willing to sell organs because you can live with one kidney, but you don't have any money. So you might actually, if you just like your kidney with you is valueless. So that debate also, please have a look at that debate. That's very interesting and easily find it on the net. So markets, we are not denying that markets are useful. Markets definitely, restricting markets can create a problem. But the broader argument that of what is considered as the invisible hand, that market economies always lead to a Pareto efficient outcome, must be understood in context. Some are situations which are not Pareto efficient might actually be more desirable for us compared to situations which are more Pareto efficient, which are Pareto efficient. Okay, so Pareto efficiency by itself need not be a gold standard. Okay, for example, I can think of a situation where tigers can be picked up from the wild and taken to breeding centers in China. Now, I can make a slight argument and say that actually will be a Pareto efficient situation. But I don't know whether we would actually want to agree with that kind of a situation is desirable. Right? So therefore, we need to have some value judgments. And value judgments are critical when understanding market outcomes, when evaluating market outcomes. Yeah, so that's and therefore there is a role for ethics. There's a role for ethics in ethics and ethical arguments, our arguments about ethics when we are evaluating policies. I think that is a mistake which we often make when we think of reforms. We very often think of reforms, we automatically think of reforms as liberalizing markets, right? Making markets more accessible, opening up markets, going towards a more private, decentralized kind of an economy. I think many times we need to think more deeply about what is it that we really want. What kind of economy do we really want to have? That's so. In the next lecture, what we'll do is we'll look at how far can we take this argument, and how do you actually regulate markets then? What are the pros and cons of regulating markets? What are the limitations of regulating markets? What are the kind of markets we can regulate? What kind of markets we cannot regulate? What does standard neoclassical theory say about that? And then there are certain limitations of that approach, which we will talk to you about, and then we will go on, right? So do you all have any more questions on this? Yeah? So I'm stopping sharing now, and I'm now going back to. So guys, any questions?
So I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the case of the Pareto, the 4-4 and the 1-1 that you were explaining,
Right.
how do we assume that? So in that case, even the 1-1 would be like, how do I explain the fact that even a 1-1 would be a better allocation than both not doing anything? Like how do you say that both doing the other thing is worse off than both not doing anything? So just that explanation.
Okay, so let me share my screen again.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen again now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically, you see, look at the preference structure. How have the 4-3-2-1, 4-3-2-1 come about? So let's look at the first example. Right. There are 4 possible outcomes that can happen. Okay. From the husband's point of view, both of them can go and watch the classical music concert. Both of them can go and watch the IPL. The husband can watch the music concert and the wife can watch the IPL, and the husband can go to the IPL and the wife can watch. So there are 4 possible outcomes. The husband has very specific preferences on these outcomes, right? Okay, so he prefers CM the most to IPL, which he prefers the most to CM IPL, which he prefers the most to IPL CM. Is this clear?
Right.
Okay. Now these preferences have to be represented by a numerical ordering. That is, you define utilities, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what is the numerical outcome? Any ordering, any set of numbers which assign a higher number to the more preferred outcome is a acceptable numerical ordering.
Correct.
So I write, say 4, 3, 2, 1 for the husband. For the wife, you get 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay. So what is critical is obviously the one with the more number, larger number, is the one which is more preferred by that individual, because that's how you assign
Correct.
numbers.
Right.
Right. Okay. So if you have CM, for example, then CM happens. Both of them are watching the classical concert. So the
Right.
husband's utility is 4 and the wife's 3.
Okay.
Okay. Clear? Because as you can see from the outcomes. Right. Whereas both are watching, suppose the husband is watching IPL and the wife is watching CM, then that is the least preferred outcome. Both of them would much rather not be there.
Right.
Right. So what has happened is really the bottom of the pile for the husband and the bottom of the pile for the wife. In which case both get 1-1.
Got it.
Right. So therefore now obviously 4-3 is better than 1-1.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Similarly 3-4 is better than 2-2 or 1-1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you get the numbers, right? The point is that if the wife had the same preference as the husband, actually she would be better off in the CM outcome compared to the first case.
Correct.
Right? But do you think that's really good for the wife?
No.
Do you think? Yeah. So that's it. Right. So just looking at utilities and preferences, the way economists do, sometimes misses out the idea of what is the desirable thing to have.
Right.
Right. So we simply can't go by the idea of efficiency. Right. That's people maximizing utilities and maximizing profits. Without taking a specific value position.
Understood.
What value position you take is independent, right? I'm not saying you have to take this particular value position.
As long as there is a value position.
You cannot judge markets without a value position.
Correct.
Right? And so the point that I'm trying to make is many times we have economistic thinking. Many times we think of, because we see diagrams and curves and mathematics and all, we think that it's all science. Yeah? And then what is happening if markets achieve Pareto efficiency, markets, if the individual hand works, then markets must automatically produce efficient outcomes, must also be good outcomes.
Right.
Right. So that's not the case. There's a difference between efficiency and goodness. That difference we must always keep in mind when we are evaluating economic policy. Efficiency just means this much, that you cannot make somebody else better off without making anybody else worse off.
Worse off.
Right. But that does not mean that those are good outcomes.
Right.
Because the question of goodness, desirability of an outcome is different from the question. Efficiency is a purely technical argument. Desirability goes beyond technicality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is therefore, because something is efficient does not make the desirable, whether it is desirable argument redundant. Okay. So that is the point that you must always bear in mind when we are looking and when we are understanding arguments about economic reforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that matter. Yeah. Any more questions?
Sir, I had one question.
Yes, Ketki.
Sir, in the bachelor's course, we used to do prisoner's dilemma, and Sarvi sir used to tell us that prisoner's dilemma is just one word. It does not necessarily require the prisoner and jail wala situation. It can happen in life also. So over here, say that two people as a couple, they are better off by cooperating, and they should not be going in two different directions. And if we take the negative payoff also, so could you show that sort of situation?
No, actually, this is not a prisoner's dilemma situation, Ketki. Okay. In a prisoner's dilemma, what happens is when individuals are following their own self-interest, they'll end up doing something which harms everybody collectively. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Right. For example, I might actually be, there is a hill next to my house, and there are people building housing societies, and everybody quarries from the hill. Yeah, everybody breaks the hill to make stones and build buildings. Yeah, but if everybody does that, the hill goes away, and if next time it rains heavily, all our buildings are flooded. Okay, hold on. I just switch this on. Hold on. I think I should 4 minutes ago. So prisoner's dilemma situation is a little different. Okay, so let me kind of show you the prisoner's. Yeah, can we discuss that prisoner's dilemma in the next class? Because we'll need a lot of time to actually discuss that.
Okay, sir. And sir,
Yeah.
also to avoid this confusion, could you suggest certain resources so that I could get to them and maybe avoid this confusion that I had regarding this?
No, this class is about confusion. You must never avoid confusion. Okay, we will talk about confusing things right now in this class. I mean, the more the confusion, the better. Yeah, because confusion is, I mean, there is nothing more valuable than confusion. Minds which are not confused, which are sure, which are cocksure about what they want to, what they know, are very dangerous minds. So please be confused. Everybody, I think confusion is much better. It's more amenable to better society and better lives.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, sure. So any questions, folks?
Sir, I have a question, sir. Ashutosh.
Yes, Ashutosh.
Sir, I am just taking an example of a small economy. There is a tribe and there are 20 people over there.
You're right.
And 10 are rich, 5 are middle class, and 5 are poor. So the leader of the tribe has to have put, what should I say, a pond over there, right? So
Okay.
the making of that pond in that tribe, there are certain resources over there, like poor and middle class can go for work, and
Okay.
that rich class can pay money over there.
Okay.
So after some time, when pond will be done, so it might be there like toll plaza, sir. If anybody is getting water from that pond more than requirement, so
Okay.
we will pay for it. So this
Okay.
situation comes in the large economy, I think, before the government for making
Okay.
any kind of thing like opportunity cost, Pareto efficient, other things are there as well.
Okay.
So can we quantify this situation, sir? After making decisions, there are something where we need to implement. Suppose 5,000 rupees we have to give every poor of this country. So corruption, bribes, so many things are there. So
Right.
you quantified that ethics that women should not be dependent on the men,
Right.
like husband wife couple. So that ethical point you conceptualize through that
Yeah.
matrix. So can it
Right.
be done through that, sir?
Yes, Ashutosh. So can you do one thing? Can you sort of write this thing down clearly so that in the next class we'll also try and develop? I'll also think about this over the next 2-3 days.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I'll
Yeah.
do it. Sir. I'll do
Yeah,
it.
sure. So we'll do this. Just write an email to me saying this specifically, and then I can share it with all, or share it in the group, and let's see how everybody else wants to react to it. Right?
Okay.
Because this is again a common journey, right? I want to learn from you. All of us want to learn from each other, talk about things. As I can see, many of you are students of economics. I can see some we have experiences in diverse, situations. Yeah. So and from different backgrounds. So let's make it a collective kind of a journey. Sure.
Sure, sir. I'll do it, sir. I will write a
Okay.
mail to everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else, folks?
Yeah. Sir,
Yes, very
so
good.
yeah, I had a kind of a question when you made the two matrices. Can you just please share your?
Hello.
Can you hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
You want to share the screen?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Let me share this now. Can you see it, Paritosh, now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So my argument is this, that when we say that the wife is kind of an old lady person, and
Right.
when she only follows the decisions of her husband and all
Right.
that thing, how convenient would that institutional structure maybe be represented in a 2x2 game format, in which we are actually giving the wife an option between the classical music and the IPL match, in the
Right.
sense that we have this game only when the wife has an option to go either over here or over there.
No, actually, what we're saying, Paritosh, here is that is the husband who has the options.
Yeah.
Okay. And the wife simply follows what the husband does. So effectively, the wife has no options.
Yeah.
Okay, the husband has to decide whether both of them will go for the classical concert, or both of them will go for the IPL, or both of them will go independently to wherever. And the wife will simply do what he wants to do, what he has decided.
Yes. So, so my question is, how convenient would that scenario be, to model it in terms of this game theoretic approach? Because game theory would, I feel, fundamentally assume that both players can choose any option which they would like to do.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because so the underlying preference structure is important. No? See, what players would do is, for a game, what do? You actually write down people's preferences, you assign utilities to them, and then create a normal form matrix.
Yeah.
Now, the point that I'm trying to make is different preferences, different situations, different matrices.
Yeah.
And the situation on certain one set of preferences might actually be more efficient in the standard economists compared to situations which are based on another set of preferences, but the less efficient set of preferences might actually be more desirable for us.